The Ford Everest Titanium 4x4 is the most high-tech and best equipped SUV in its class. But what do you get if you go one step below the top of the line? This over here is the Ford Everest Titanium 4x2. It's the next less expensive variant after the 4x4. Should you get this or the 4x4? And is this even worth your money? Let's find out. It's almost a consensus among reviewers that the Ford Everest Titanium 4x4 is one of the best SUVs in its class right now. It's one of the best in terms of comfort, noise insulation, it's one of the most premium looking, and it's the best in terms of tech by a mile. There are those though who are not fans of high tech, whether because it intimidates them or because they think it increases the chances of something failing. For those who want the looks and the comfort of the Titanium 4x4 but are intimidated by the tech, there's the Titanium 4x2. The Ford Everest Titanium 4x2 is almost like the Titanium 4x4 but stripped of its most high-tech features. We'll talk about what features were taken out later, but first, let's do a walk around. If you're leaning towards the 4x2, you might be pleased to know that the 4x2 and the 4x4 look almost the same on the outside. Like the 4x4, the 4x2 also gets 20-inch wheels wrapped in Goodyear Wrangler tires. The 4x2 gets the same chrome accents. It also says titanium here, like on the 4x4. You also get roof racks, which are rated at 100 kilograms. So like the 4x4, this also has a smart locking system. As long as you have the key fob with you, you can lock or unlock the vehicle by pressing this button over here. The most obvious difference on the outside would be these headlamps. So the 4x4 gets matrix adaptive LED headlamps. The 4x2 only gets these reflector LEDs. Now the matrix adaptive LED headlamps allow you to see further on twisty roads because they turn with the steering wheel. These are not so bad though, but for your reference, here is a side-by-side comparison. Like the 4x4, this also gets front parking sensors, but unlike the 4x4, this does not come with a front camera. One more minor cosmetic difference is this garnish over here. On the 4x4, it says bi-turbo. On the 4x2, it says turbo. And that's because these two variants have different engines. One of the most important differences between the 4x4 and the 4x2 is underneath the hood. So the 4x4 comes with a 2-liter bi-turbo engine, which puts out 210 horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque, while the 4x2 comes with a 2-liter single turbo, which puts out 170 horsepower and 405 Newton meters of torque. The 4x4 comes with an 8-speed automatic, while the 4x2 comes with a 6-speed automatic. Like the 4x4, the 4x2 also comes with a double wishbone suspension at the front. It doesn't come with a front skid plate. That over there is a plastic cover. But from what I can see, the engine is mounted so high that it doesn't really need so much protection, at least if you're not doing hardcore off-roading. Yeah, so the engine is mounted pretty high up, which is good for water wading and also for off-roading. That subframe over there is enough to protect the engine from damage. Here at the back, the 4x2 looks almost the same as the 4x4, except that you don't get the 4x4 badge over here. Like the 4x4, this also gets LED tail lamps, rear parking sensors, and of course, a power liftgate. Now, one major difference between the 4x4 and the 4x2 is that the 4x2 doesn't get the power folding third row seats of the 4x4. You have to fold the seats manually. Okay, so on the inside, the 4x4 and the 4x2 look almost identical. The first difference that you might notice is the shifter. The 4x4 comes with an electronic shifter. The 4x2 comes with this mechanical shifter. You also get fewer buttons on the steering wheel of the 4x2 because this does not come with ADAS. And the 4x2 does not come with a 360 camera. Instead, you get a reverse camera with active guidelines. The resolution is okay, but the 360 cam of the 4x4 is definitely missed here. Now, because of the way the camera is positioned, you can actually see your plate number over here. Now, if you're like me, you drive a lot of cars and you sometimes forget your plate number. If you want to know if you're coding or not, you can just look at the camera. Now, Ford made sure that you had a lot of physical knobs and buttons here, like for the climate control and also for your volume control. All of them have dedicated physical knobs and buttons. But unfortunately, like the 4x4, the brake auto hold is on the infotainment screen. So you have to go through the menus if you want to turn it on or off. But later on, I'll tell you why you don't even have to turn it on or off through the menus. Like the 4x4 though, this gets the same 12-inch vertical screen. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. This also gets the same 12-inch instrument cluster as the 4x4. Now that's fully customizable and the resolution is also very good. You have different drive modes. You have Eco, Tow Haul, Slippery. Yeah, you don't get as many drive modes as the 4x4, understandably. And like the 4x4, this also gets a panoramic sunroof. And if you want an SUV with a panoramic sunroof, this is your only option. Like the 4x4, this also comes with a wireless phone charger. Now in terms of materials, it is also the same. This over here is leather wrapped and it's quite soft. The armrests are also leather wrapped and so is this. The seats are wrapped in leather. Both front seats are power adjustable and the driver's seat has adjustable lumbar support. The steering wheel is also covered in leather. It has tilt and telescopic adjustment. In terms of storage, you also get dual glove boxes, one at the top and one at the bottom. I just wish that this was dampened, as this kind of ruins the premium feel of the interior. Yes, overall I think this is one of the nicest interiors in its class and definitely the most modern looking. So space here at the back is quite adequate. Knee room is pretty good. The backs of the front seats are concave, which give you more knee room. I have about 4.5 inches here, or 5. Headroom is also quite good. I have about 2.5 or 3 inches. You get a nicely padded foldable armrest, which is also leather wrapped. You get 2 cup holders over here. Your aircon vents are up here, and you also have fan speed controls down there. You have one USB-A port, one USB-C port, and one AC outlet. Yes, overall it's a nice place to be. And like I always say, this is the best place to appreciate the panoramic sunroof because you can see the full length of it. To get to the third row, just pull on this over here. And the seat slides forward for easier entry. Now having this definitely helps. Okay. Okay, so you have this hump over here which makes foot placement a bit tricky if you have big feet. The third row seats of most SUVs are meant for smaller adults and kids, and the Everest is no exception. I can sit here for short trips, but it's not the most comfortable seating position. The second row seats can be moved forward, so your knee room can be adjustable. This is as far back as you can move it, and I can still fit a finger in between my knee and the seat. Headroom is quite okay. I have about 1.5 inches of headroom. You get one 12-volt outlet over here. You get 2 cup holders, one over here and one over here. It's not as spacious as the third row of the MUX, but I think it's better than the Terra and the Fortuner. Easy peasy, man. This definitely does not feel slow. Okay, so one of the most important mechanical differences between the 4x4 and the 4x2, aside from the 4x4 drivetrain, is the engine and of course the transmission. Now this has less power than the 4x4. This only has 170 horsepower and 405 Newton meters of torque. But if you're thinking that this is going to be slow or underpowered, that is totally not the case. It's actually pretty quick. Overtaking is not a problem at all, and it has enough power to push you back into your seat. Now, is the power difference worth it? Now, that is a question of whether you believe in the saying more is always better, because I think that more is always better. But this is definitely not lacking, and I think it's going to be more than enough for most people. The Everest has one of the best dialed suspensions in its class. It feels soft, so it absorbs road imperfections really well, but it also keeps body roll at a minimum. It's not going to handle as well as a crossover, but for a large PPV, it's actually quite a bit of fun to drive on twisty roads. The Everest Titanium 4x4 is the most quiet PPV in its class. The 4x2, even though it has a different engine, it's also very quiet. Even at highway speeds, I'm doing about 94 kph, there is very little wind noise, which is surprising considering the shape of the car. It's kind of shaped like a box. There's also very little tire noise, and you could barely hear the engine. It's almost like you're not driving a diesel. Now on the highway, the steering does get stiffer. You don't want the steering to feel too light when you're going at 100 kph. Now as for fuel economy, I'm getting about 16.5 kpl, which is just a little bit better than the 4x4. I was getting about 15.9 on the 4x4 in similar traffic conditions. Okay, so the Ford Everest Titanium 4x2 has auto hold, but like I said, there is no physical auto hold button. Sometimes you don't want auto hold to engage, like if you're in stop and go traffic and you only have to stop for a fraction of a second. So it's convenient to have a physical on-off switch for the auto hold. On the Titanium 4x2, I'd argue that it's not needed as much. On some vehicles, when you come to a complete stop, auto hold is automatically engaged. On the Everest Titanium, okay, so we're at the complete stop now, and the auto hold is not yet engaged. Now to engage it, I have to press on the brake pedal a bit harder, and that's the only time that the auto hold engages. Okay, let's try that again. Coming to a complete stop, auto hold is off. If I want it to turn on, I just have to put a bit more pressure on the brake pedal. So that gives you control on when the auto hold function will engage. So you don't really need an on-off button so much. So what do you get on the 4x4 that you don't get on the 4x2? I have a full review of the 4x4, which is linked below. If you don't want to watch another video, or if you don't want to see a wall of text, I'll briefly show you on video some of the differences. So like I said before, the 4x4 gets adaptive headlights. The shifter also has this nifty safety feature. You get adaptive cruise control, which is almost like autopilot for your feet. It automatically applies the brakes and the gas depending on the speed of traffic ahead of you. It can even bring you to a complete stop and then resume again. Now this is one of my favorite features of the 4x4, as it reduces your workload especially in very heavy traffic. The 4x4 also gets lane keep assist, which automatically steers the car by following the lines on the road. I'd say not as useful or as reliable as adaptive cruise control, but it's still nice to have for those emergency situations where you just have to take your hands off the wheel for a couple of seconds. The 4x4 also has autonomous emergency braking. Now, we tried testing this feature. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but even if it only works half the time, it's still better than not having it at all. The 4x4 also has automatic parking. I'd say not as useful as the other features if you know how to park, but it could be a good conversation starter if you have a date. The 4x4 also gets a 360 camera. Now, whether you're into tech or not, this is really helpful if you're driving a large SUV. You'd be able to see obstacles around you that you would otherwise not be able to see if you didn't have the system. Now, this doesn't require a learning curve as it automatically turns on when you put the vehicle in reverse. And of course, the 4x4 gets a more powerful engine, which sends power to all four wheels. Now, this allows you to drive over harsher terrain without fear of getting stuck.
You know. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
The Ford Everest Titanium 4x2 sells for 2,179,000 pesos. That's 316,000 pesos less expensive than the 4x4. Now, I'd say just for the adaptive cruise, the engine, and the 360 camera alone, that price difference is worth it. But if you don't feel like paying 300,000 pesos for the fancy tech and the engine and the 4x4 system, the 4x2 still has plenty to offer. The 4x2 is still one of the most comfortable and one of the most refined PPVs in its class.